Hello everyone, my name is Terrystan Sustal. My student presentation for this week, week 8, is called CSS Keyframe Animations. So to begin with, we could start with a question with what are CSS animations? Well, according to W3 Schools, CSS animations is an animation that allows an element to change styles one from another, and you can change how many CSS properties you want and how many times you want. So, how do we use CSS animations? In order to use CSS animation, we need to specify keyframes in order for it to work. The keyframes will define what styles the elements of the HTML will have for a certain time. And on the left, we see a list of properties for CSS animations. They are add keyframes, animation name, animation duration, animation delay, animation iteration count, animation direction, animation timing function, animation fill mode, and lastly, animation. Now, we have a list of definitions for the properties for the CSS animation. According to W3 Schools, animation name binds an animation to an element. Animation duration defines how long an animation should take to complete. Animation delay specifies a delay for the start of an animation. Animation iteration count specifies the number of times an animation should run. Animation direction specifies whether an animation should be played forwards, backwards, or in an alternate cycle. Animation timing function specifies the speed curve of the animation. Animation fill mode specifies a style for the target element when an animation is not playing, before it starts, after it ends, or both. Lastly, animation is pretty much just a shorthand property, or in other words, a shortcut to call the properties of the CSS animation in just one line of code. So, the add keyframes rule. The add keyframes property will hold all of the styles that we want our element to do. It will gradually change styles in a certain amount of time. In order for the add keyframes property to work, we need to bind the animation to an HTML element. So for example number 1, the first example will show how to bind the keyframes to an HTML element. So over here, I have my HTML and my CSS code. This is my structure. So I pretty much just have a section with an h1 tag saying hello world. And then for my CSS, this is where we would pretty much focus everything for this video or for this example. So we are calling the section, and then we have a font size of 32 pixels, and then for a text align center. And now I will show you an example on how to use CSS animation. So first, we will call the add keyframes, and then we would name it, for example, let's just say example. So we would name it example. So inside the add keyframes, as I said earlier, this is where we want the styles for the HTML element, so whatever we want to do. So we could start with, for example, from, and then from color black, and then to color orange. So this pretty much says that the text font will start from the color black and then it will change to color orange. Now, how do we call or bind the add keyframes called example to the section? Well, we would just have to say animation name and then the title of the keyframe or the add keyframe. Example. That's pretty much it. And then we would also say the animation duration. Let's say we could do about 5 seconds. Now the animation duration will specify how long this animation will run. Now let's save it, and we can do a refresh. Now you can see in 5 seconds the font changes from color black to orange, and it only lasts for 5 seconds. And I could show it to you again. Here you go, black to orange. Now that's how you call the keyframe animation to an HTML element. Now let's go where things get more interesting. So for example number 2, the second example will show how to be more specific with the styles you want to change for the HTML element. So from the previous example, we used from and to. And now for this example, we want to be more specific. Let's call the @keyframes property again, and then let's call it example. And now, instead of saying from or to, we can use percentages. For example, 0% will be color black, and then 25% will be color, let's do red. And then 50%, it will be, let's say, color, let's do green. And then for 75%, we could do color yellow. And then lastly, 100%, we could do color purple. And now we specified, or we are more specific on which colors to go from for 0%, 25%, and so forth. And now we would have to call it in the section. So we would say animation name, and then our animation name is called example. And then the animation duration, or in other words, how long do we want this animation to run? Let's say 7 seconds. And then we save it. And then there you go. As you can see, the H1 tag, or in other words, the section element, is changing colors for 7 seconds from black to red to green, yellow, and then to purple at 100%. And then we could reload this page again so you guys can see. There it goes. There's red, there's green, there's yellow, and then there's purple. Let's do it again. So it starts from black, red, green, yellow, and then purple. Alright, so for example number 3, the third example will show how to move the HTML element around the screen using keyframes. So I have over here for the section element, the animation name, it's called example, and then the animation duration, it's for 10 seconds. But what if we want to move the hello world text around the screen? Well, we could simply say, or we could simply add directions for this @keyframes example. So for example, at 0% for the color black, it will stay at left 0 pixels. And then for the red, we could do left 200 pixels. And then when it turns green, we could do left 500 pixels. So as you guys can see, it's already starting to move. And then from yellow, we could do left 700 pixels. And then from purple, we could bring it back to for where it started, just 0 pixels. Alright, let's save it. And as you can see, the code is starting to work. And then this is running for 10 seconds. And it goes back to 0 pixels. So I could explain it to you while the code is running. So red is 200 pixels, green is 500 pixels, yellow is 700 pixels, and then purple, it goes back to where it started, where it was black, 0 pixels. And lastly, the fourth example will show how to set how many times an animation should run. So just with the previous example, we have the hello world text move around the screen, but this time we will show you, or I will show you how to run the code for a number of times, or if you want for an infinite number of times. So for example, for this one, same with example number 3, we will put directions for this tag. So we will say left is 0px or pixels, and then for top it will be 0 pixels also. And then for the red, we will say left 200 pixels, and for the top it will be 0 pixels. And then for the green, for 50%, we would say left 200 pixels, and then top 200 pixels. So as you guys can see, the code is starting to move around. And for yellow, let's say left 0 pixels, and then for top it will be 200 pixels. And now for the purple, let's say 0 pixels for the left, and then for the top it will also be 0 pixels. And now, as you guys can see, the code is somewhat making a square or a circle in our page. And as you guys notice, it's only running for one time. So if you want the code to run for multiple times, for example, we could add animation, iteration, count. For example, we want this code or for this animation to loop 3 times or 2 times. That's the first one, and then that's the second one. What if we want it 4 times? Save it. That's the first one. That's the second one. The third one. And the fourth one. Well, what if we want this animation to run for an infinite number of times? Well, it's pretty simple. We would just put infinite. Now let's save it. So as you notice, the code is running for an infinite number of times, and the code will pretty much not stop from this point, or this example. That's pretty much my student presentation for this video. I didn't get to cover all of the animation properties, so that I won't take too much time for this video. But if you want to learn more about CSS animations, I recommend you to visit W3 schools and just search CSS Keyframes Animation, and it will pretty much explain all of the properties that I've explained to you or showed you, and then they will have a lot of examples over there. But I was only able to tackle quite few of their properties, and I think they are very useful. If you want any CSS animation properties or animations for your website, and then use them for your fonts or use them for your blocks or for your background colors. And yeah, thank you guys for watching this video, and I hope you guys learned something. Feel free to give me a message or reply to the thread for this video. If you guys have any questions or comments or feedback, I would appreciate it. Thank you.